Hello, I'm back here again. I just wanted to make a video covering, I believe this is patch 1.6, right? Should be 1.6, yeah. Blessings across the Highlands. So I thought that, so I thought that after the massive patch that was 1.5, with Afro, Selenor, Sage, Celena, all that good stuff, that we would have had maybe a lighter patch afterwards, considering that half anniversary is right around the corner. But actually, I would argue that this patch is bigger than the last one. So we're gonna kind of go through a similar format here. We're gonna talk about the new combatants first, how good they are, should you roll for them, um, and then after that we are going to be going over some of the events and the new content in order of importance, just some general tidbits of knowledge that you should have going into this update. So first of all, there were one, two, three, four new combatants added as of today's patch. The first one is going to be the contract character. So this character was added to standard banner, and they were, and you get a copy of them for free if you purchase the battle pass, right? So we have Celena. No, don't confuse this with the Celena that was in that. Well, it still is technically in Spotlight Dash. This is a different Celena. She's Red Pathos. She's classified as a defender, right? She is a supposed to be a sustain option for red. Now, I generally think that when it comes to the battle pass, if you are a light spender, the battle pass is always going to be good value for the sole reason that you get like 50 limited pulls and a bunch of other stuff from it. I don't think the value of the battle pass necessarily lies on the character. However, I will say that this new character in particular is pretty underwhelming. So if we go over her basic skills, one of them gives one ally a shield, one of them hits an enemy and it gives an ally with the lowest HP percentage a heal, and then her ultimate buffs her entire team, giving them max HP increase, and then buffs their healing received and shield gained. Uh, so the main problem is obviously her sustain options only affect one combatant. So you have characters like Anya with stars, Arena with 1 star, you have Triss, you have Lynn, you have all these characters that can sustain the entire team, and generally that's going to be considered a lot more valuable, especially because a lot of the time you're going to be dealing with AoE attacks, so everybody's going to need a little bit of a top up, right? And then unfortunately, her star up effects don't really do anything for her, considering that stars for a battle pass unit are easier to get than others because you can just get their cores from the advanced core shop. But essentially, she gets more SP. Allies with Astral Unity share damage taken, which isn't great. And then when healing or shielding allies, they get their attack increased by 30% for 3 turns. Very underwhelming. It's unfortunate. I mean, the closest thing Red has to a sustain right now is Felicia. Felicia has a team-wide heal, right? Um, Red also has Rice. I would say Rice is better than Celena as well. Um, Obviously, if you get her, you get her. Um, but I would generally say that Celena is not worth investing into at all. Is not worth buying her cores from the shop at all. Just not worth playing at all. And I know my Celena is level 1, but you can just tell from reading her kit that she's not really great. So after Celena, we have 2 characters that are currently featured on limited rate up banners. We have Savanna and we have Fata. So let me go over Savanna first. So Savanna is a single target red pathos DPS. She is a unit that scales mostly off of armor pen. She focuses a lot on her passive to deal damage, which we'll go over right now. So essentially, when she when she is parrying, right? So basically, you can use this skill right here to go into parry, or if you ult, you'll also go into parry, right? But when you parry, uh, each time she gets hit, she gets damage increase, which stacks up to 10 times. And then when allies have 20 or more buff stacks, or when allies have a combined buff total of 20 or more stacks, this combatant gains Dragon Flames, and then with Dragon Flames, if you successfully parry an attack, aka you get hit while your parry is up from an enemy that you have provoked, again, this is how you provoke them with this skill right here, you then counterattack. You deal 80% of the parry damage to that target. This cannot critically hit and does not count as an offensive skill, and you can activate a counterattack up to 3 times per turn. So obviously, a counterattack is a free action up to 3 times per turn. This is going to be a lot of your damage output, considering that she cannot crit on her counterattacks, and considering that her ultimate deals jab damage. Savanna is very, very much so favored to just go full armor pen. Pen set, pen subs, all that good stuff. She doesn't scale with crit that much at all because her counters literally cannot critically hit. So now let's take a look at her star up effects. So 1 star, Savanna's Pursuit ignores 40% of the target's defense and gives her a heal based on the damage dealt. At her 4 stars, at the start of battles, she gains the Dragon Flame buff automatically, so you don't need to do this mini game, right? And then also, this allows you to be able to counterattack against enemies, even ones that you haven't provoked, as long as they hit her. Now, do keep in mind she does still need to be in her parry stance in order to... She needs to be in her parry stance in order to counterattack still, even if you have her 4 star. So she can't just counter right away, which is something we thought she might have been able to do pre-release, which would have made her solid in PvP, but that doesn't appear to be the case, so she's not really that great in PvP. So at 6 stars, Pursuit now deals damage equal to 50% of the total damage dealt by the target. So instead of 80% of the post-mitigation damage, it is 50% of the pre-mitigation damage, which is quite good. Now, this all sounds pretty good on paper, right? You get a bunch of free actions through counterattacks. She can self-sustain herself quite well. She scales off armor pen, gains damage, all that good stuff. The only problem with Savanna is she doesn't actually deal a lot of damage. Her numbers are honestly kind of low. In the best case scenario, when you are fighting against bosses that hit really hard, like in Nightmare's Call or the event boss, my counters with a 6 star, fully pathos leveled, right? Full pathos weapon, full outfits, full pen gear, right? I've got like 97% pen. It's not the best, but it's good enough, right? It's like my tertiary full pen set, so spare me. At most, I was doing 120 can counters, which is okay, but her ultimate doesn't do that much. I just feel like her damage is underwhelming. And this is like from a perspective where I have star up effects. I don't even have to play this minigame. For people who have to play this minigame to even have access to her counterattacks, I think Savanna is significantly worse. I would recommend skipping this character. I honestly hope that like the food fantasy collaboration units, they consider buffing her. She, compared to some of the options we currently have in the game, at this point, is not that great. And she is probably useless before her 4 stars. If you really like her and you're, a bit more of a whale, then you could get her to like. I would probably say I don't know how hard her counters hit before 6 stars because it's post mitigation pre 6 stars, so her counters might not even hit at all pre 6 stars. So I don't know. You need at least 4 stars, maybe even 6 before she starts being mediocre. Before that, she's just useless. So I would not recommend pulling this character. After the testing I've done with her, I played her in Nightmare's Call. I played her in the event. I've played her in a bunch of other stuff. Her damage contribution just isn't there, and you have to keep in mind this is content that's shilling her, right? In content in the last patch, content that shilled Aphros is doing infinitely more damage, and I know she's AOE, but there's still like a certain expectation for her damage output, especially in content that is supposed to favor her. So I would recommend skipping Savanna. Now we do have the other rate up unit, which is Fata. So Fata's kit is kind of all over the place, but allow me to go over it. First of all, holy, look at that chest. Anyways, so she is a red Pathos buffer. Her passive gives all allies that are red Pathos an attack boost, which is whatever. I don't think attack percent is the greatest thing, but it's there. So her two basic skill cards, she has uh, her buff card here. So this applies one stack of interweave. This essentially gives all allies 3% armor pen. This stacks up to 8 times, so you can get up to 24% armor pen, which is pretty good, right? 24% armor pen, that's usually like about as much as you'd get from a Scarlet passive. But on top of that, when an ally other than this, combatant gains a stackable buff, she herself gets 2 stacks of another buff called perpetuity. So when an ally that's not her receives a stackable buff, this is important, stackable, you can consume 1 stack of perpetuity to grant them an additional stack of the buff. So there's a character we'll be going over after her, which benefits pretty well from perpetuity. Savanna can stack her passive faster. Unfortunately, it doesn't give her additional turns of parry stance. I guess parry isn't considered a buff. Well, I guess it isn't stackable, right? Because you can't stack the parry. It just has a duration. So I guess that makes sense. So the only thing you can stack on Savanna is her passive self buff, which is okay. The next unit uses perpetuity a little bit better. But basically, you're just ramping up your interweave stacks throughout the course of combat and just, trying to get that buff going. Now, her second card is just deal AoE jab damage. So we have Scarlet for blue jabber, we have Minami for green jabber, and now we have Fata for red jabber. Now, I've heard that in Phantom Clash, she does prioritize using her buff card as opposed to her AoE card. So she's not great there, and she's not going to be as strong as Minami, so I don't really think we're going to see Fata in PvP at all. It's just kind of funny that we have a red jab unit. I'm sure Karipo's going to look into that, right? But yeah, it's just AoE jab damage. And then her ultimate for some heals your team based on her attack, and then she gets 2 stacks of perpetuity, which is the buff that she gets from here. So what about her star ups? So at 1 stars, she gets 2 stacks of her perpetuity immediately at the start of combat. 4 stars, the interweave stack limit is increased from 8 to 16, so instead of getting up to 24% armor pen, you can get up to 48% armor pen, which is quite a bit. After using Divine Strike, allies with Interweave receive an extra stack of Interweave, so it gives you the ability to extend, because keep in mind, Interweave, it lasts for 3 turns, right? Could get bad RNG. You could just not get any Holy Light Blessings, and then you could just run out of this buff, and because it stacks up to 8, and in this case 16 times, if you lose that buff, that's borderline reset territory for PvE scenarios. So the fact that your second card can extend and add onto the interweave stacks is extremely valuable for consistency. I would probably say that this is her best breakpoint out of all of them. And then allies with interweave gain 15% more attack. That's okay, right? Just another 15% attack. Again, I don't think attack percent is that great. So, is Fata good? In my opinion, Fata is good, but situational. I would say that Fata is only really great with units such as um, Savanna, as well as the unit that we will be going over after Fata. So basically the new characters. Now keep in mind there is another new character coming out 2 weeks in that could have synergy with these characters, so things are subject to change. I think in the niches that she has, Fata is quite strong. I also think Fata has great potential for future characters because of her unique ability to let them ramp their self buffs quicker. That's stack. And she just gives a lot of different buffs. She has sustain in a pinch, which is okay. Um, I think if you are free to play, if you are not pulling on the Spotlight Dash banner, you're not looking to invest into the current Spotlight Dash character, you're not looking to invest into Savanna, I would honestly wait until right before the banner ends and we see uh, the next character that's releasing in 2 weeks. We see her kit. They usually post it on Twitter like 2 days before. So I would just wait. I would hold. I would see if maybe she makes good use out of Fata, because other than her, it's basically a whale unit, right? And if she doesn't really synergize with Fata, and if she doesn't really synergize with Fata, and you're not wailing on Spotlight Dash, then I would probably say skip. If either of those are the case, then you could definitely consider pulling Fata. Now, I will say both of her early star breakpoints are quite good. 1 star and 4 star just give really, really, really good consistency. I don't think she's dysfunctional without them. I just think they make her feel a lot better to play. But again, she's very situational on her teams. I mean, you could pick up a copy of her for future-proof purposes, but given that half anniversary is likely coming the update after this one, that might not be a gamble that you're looking to partake in. But I would say maybe hold, wait, see what you want to do, see what the next character does. Um, and then if you do pull her, you can pull a copy. And then 1 star is great, 4 stars really great, 6 stars whatever. But if you're getting to 4 stars, you might just be a whale and 6 star her anyways. So who am I to stop you, right? And we have one more new character. And yes, I did sell my soul to the Spotlight Dash demons, right? So here we have Triss Twin Shadows. I liked playing her so much that I gave her UR gear. So basically what we have here is, uniquely enough, a white Pathos single target damage dealer. Usually white Pathos characters are like supporters, sustain, stuff like that. And then Black Pathos is the DPS. Here we have a White Pathos DPS, so it's a bit strange. But yes, Triss is obtainable through Spotlight Dash, as controversial as that may be. Um, but ultimately, here is what you can expect from this character. So this character is a bit more complex. So basically, her passive, first of all, her SP cap is 2 instead of 4. So you only need 2 SP to use your ultimate instead of 5. Obviously, you start combat with 1 SP, so you just use 1 ability, and then you can use your ultimate. And then when you cast her ultimate, it switches her Pathos between white and black. So obviously, since she's white Pathos by default, she's going to start combat as white Pathos. If you use your ultimate, you're going to switch to black Pathos. If you use your ultimate again, you're going to switch back to white Pathos, etc. When you use basic skills, you gain 2 stacks of a self-stacking buff called Yin Yang Harmony. Again, do keep in mind, this is a stackable buff. This does work with Fata's Perpetuity. So if you have Perpetuity, it's 3 stacks instead of 2. So Yin Yang Harmony stacks up to 15 times. For when you're in White Pathos form, each stack grants you HP and Endurance, and then when you are in Black Pathos form, each stack gives you Attack and Armor Pen. Now to go over her skills. So her skill 1, Yin Yang Creation. So she devours a card. This is exactly what Aphros' ultimate does. It just consumes a different card in the deck, which is great if you're running a lot of supports because you can get rid of some pointless cards to make room for potentially more Triss cards, right? Deals damage to a single enemy. And then if you're White Pathos, you give your entire team life steal on their next attack. If you're Black Pathos, if Triss has a shield, you consume 10% of the shield value to deal an extra instance of damage equal to 30% of the total shield value of your entire team, which is capped at 400% of her attack. Now, I can vouch this does hit pretty hard. All of her cards hit pretty hard. But you definitely want a shielder to capitalize on this. 1-star Arena is the best option, right? Because 1-star Arena has innate synergy because her passive gets enhanced for white/black Pathos allies. So Arena is a perfect teammate for Triss. We'll see with her next couple cards that Fata is a great fit for Triss. So then that last slot's kind of up in the air, right? So our skill 2 here, Balance Shift. Deal damage to one enemy. If you're White Pathos, you grant your entire team a shield equal to 25% of your current HP for 2 turns. So she does have access to shielding, which is cool. You're building her damage, so the shield's not going to be super crazy, but it is a 25% current HP shield, which can certainly be used to trigger her skill 1's shield-based damage effect, right? And then if she's black, she consumes 5% of her current HP. And then on top of the 72% attack that you deal, she does an additional instance of 97% jab damage. So jab. So armor pen. We know that Fata grants armor pen. We know Fata can extend her skill or her passive buff, right? So now, we're starting to piece things together on how Fata can be a useful asset for this unit. So now Avatar's Flurry. So remember, this ultimate will change your Pathos color when it's used. But essentially, it just deals jab damage. So, again, 2 jab damage cards, right? Armor Pen, quite good on this unit. So let's take a look at her Starb effects and see how effective they are. Okay, so 1 star. SP cap is reduced to 1. After using her ult, you gain 1 SP. This pretty much guarantees that you will have your ultimate every turn, which gives you as much flexibility as you need because you can pretty much swap your form on demand, and then every turn you can activate your skills before ulting if you want to activate them for one form, and then you can activate them after your ulting if you want the other form. This is an insanely good star-up effect for that reason. At 4 stars, elemental counter effects increase by 15% whenever an ally attacks or is attacked. So basically, I mean, she always benefits off this because White Pathos counters every other color, right? Or, well, she's Black Pathos when she attacks, so that's what I meant. Yeah, she will always benefit off of this generally because Black Pathos counters every other color. Then if you have teammates that also Pathos counter, and this helps for damage dealt and damage taken, right? So it's pretty solid. The really good part about this one is using basic skills grants an additional stack of Yin Yang Harmony. So instead of 2, you get 3, and then with Perpetuity, instead of 3, you get 4. So at that point, it takes 4 basic abilities to max stack your passive with Perpetuity, and then 5 skills to do so without Perpetuity. And it has to be basic skills, not your ultimate, right? And then 6 stars. Once the Yin Yang Harmony stack reaches its maximum, gain an additional 6 stacks of Yin Yang Harmony, and then Oneness of All provides boosts to all stats. So that's your passive. So essentially, you get the HP, the Endurance, the Attack, and the Armor Pen at all times. Right? So it's pretty good. Now, is Triss good? From testing, Triss is very good. With my 6-star Triss, all of my basic cards at the start of combat can do upwards of 250k, and then they will ramp up to upwards of 1.2 million for the basic cards and like 800k for the ultimate. So Triss can definitely do a lot of damage. She does require some setup. One thing we do have to keep in mind is that Triss is a light dark character, so we do have to hold her to a higher standard, right? So Now I will disclose that again, half anniversary is coming, and Minotaura will be coming alongside that. It's very likely that Minotaura will be a stronger pure carry than Triss is, right? Of course, she does have versatility, but just keep that in mind. Now, I will say that Triss does a lot of multi-hit. Well, she multi-hits on both of her basic cards. So if we ever get Pandakato, uh, then she might surpass Minotaura. So, but I mean, obviously it's Spotlight Dash. There's a lot of volatility there. You want to be very careful with how you approach getting this character. I will say that if you do get this character, um, her 1 star is really, really good. I would almost recommend that you don't invest in her unless you have 1 star, because she can be a bit clunky without it. Because you can't reliably keep your ultimate up, so you can't swap forms on demand, which can be a bit troubling. It also means that turn 1 you're stuck with her White Pathos form, which just sucks. I would say if you're gonna get her, please, I would just advise getting her to 1 star. Obviously, all of her star up effects are great, but it's a light dark, so please exercise caution with how much of your resources you use to get this character. But I will say, yes, she is very strong. She is a top tier single target DPS from what it looks like, but there's not a lot of competition. Well, I mean there is, but nothing like light dark, right? Like the only other light dark single target DPS is Sylviette. Like you might have to wait for a Minotaur to come out before making a comparison, but I definitely think she's close, and I definitely think she has the potential to surpass. I will say that. I think she's very, very, very good. Okay, so that was a lot of time yapping about the combatants, but honestly, there was a lot to go over here. So I'm going to try to be a bit more brief, going over some of the events here. So something I really, 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 really want to go over is the addition of UR gear. So essentially, what is UR gear? How can you get UR gear? What are the ramifications of UR gear, right? So UR gear is essentially a rarity higher than the typical SSR gear, right? It's red. It has additional ascension stats. Um, Other than that, it's mostly the same, but yeah, you get those ascension stats on there. As far as I know, everything else is pretty similar, but it's those ascension stats that can really come into play potentially. Now, do keep in mind you don't have to refarm all of your gear, right? This is done through a ascension process. So you see here, you can see ascend once you get a unit, once you get a piece of gear to 5 stars plus 5. You can use 5 UR fibers, and you can ascend it to UR. UR pieces of gear have these ascension stats. You can reforge them for 1 UR fiber, and then after you reforge 20 times, you get a second advancement stat as well, which will further increase the value of the piece of equipment. I guess the best thing to do is to go over the ramifications first. I think the ramifications of this set are going to be mainly for PvP. So the thing with PvP is, obviously, combat power is everything when it comes to arena. Whoever goes first has a 90% chance of winning unless the player is bad or their account just doesn't have the characters that they need to succeed in PvP, right? So what upgrading your gear to UR does is it gives you a lot more CP, because obviously you're getting all these flat stats, attack, defense, HP. They're all pretty good at increasing your combat power, especially HP percent. From what I was able to see, just URing your full set on one character can increase CP by around 8k. And then, because from the collection bonuses that I got from pulling today, plus the ascending just my Manami's gear to UR, my combat power in Arena went from 860k to 871k. So if you are looking to min-max and you are looking to excel in PvP, you are going to look to UR 8 sets, not just the sets of your main roster, but for your assists as well. I think that these aren't going to be as important in PvE because attack percent doesn't really do anything. HP defense can make you more survivable, but ultimately it's not really going to be super duper crazy for your damage output. I wouldn't expect a major difference. This is mainly for CP padding from what I'm seeing. Could be wrong, but that's my initial first impression. So then the question is, okay, cool. So you need a bunch of UR fibers to get this done. So how do we get them? Well, there is a new endgame mode that they added to the game called Felinian Fairyland. This is the only place where you can obtain these. So basically, how this mode works is you have these trial tokens. You start with 3, you gain 1 every week, right? So every daily reset on Wednesday is going to be when you get new ones, or maybe it's just a week from when you spend the first one. I'm not entirely sure. And then you can hold up to 3. So you have 3 initially to start accumulating resources, and then you will regenerate 1 every week. So essentially, how this game mode works is you go in, you go through a number of different combat situations. You have to go through a lot of different battles, and you can only use each combatant in your roster once. So you need to make sure that I've heard that gear doesn't matter. I don't know how much that's actually true. I think there's some sort of baseline there, but gear doesn't 100% translate over. But essentially, you need quite a few characters leveled to do decently well in this. The more battles you're able to clear, the more UR fibers you can get. Obviously, if you max out your exploration rewards, you can probably with these and these, you can get over 100 UR fibers. 100 UR fibers is 20 pieces of gear, which is like 3 sets. Um, so you can, with the 3 tokens that you have right now, get your full arena team UR'd if you play optimally. You just have to not burn all of your units right away. You have to spread them out. Sometimes use 2 character, 3 character teams if you're able to beat certain fights with them. The fights aren't super hard. And then you don't want to make one team too strong because there is a mirror round every now and then where you have to fight your team that you have deployed that has the highest combat power. So you want to spread your units very, very well. And then you get points each time you beat an encounter. And once you finish 12 encounters, you finish and you get all of the rewards. So basically, if you value PvP, and I would just say in general, Felinian Fairyland, but especially if you're a PvP player, Felinian Fairyland is going to be like mandatory to do. Otherwise, you are going to fall behind in terms of combat power. Other than that, there isn't too much to go over. I mean, we could go over the event, right? Obviously, there's a new event to accompany the patch. There is going to be a new boss. It's essentially it's mostly single target. He sometimes summons other dudes, so it can be 1 to 3 targets. Very rarely 5 targets, so the number of targets can vary. This is going to be just like the previous event, where you have phases, where there's going to be a new phase every week, and then each week you can get upwards of 1,500 theater tickets, and then you have the overall rankings where the top 100 get a new frame and a new profile icon, right? As far as teams that I would recommend to fight this boss, I mean, the best thing you can play is probably Triss, Fata, Arena +1, if I'm completely honest. Not everybody's going to have the means to get that, though. So after that, I would say your options are 2 different things, I would say. The first thing, you could definitely just play like a super aggressive green team. Green generally just has better tools than red teams, so even though green is neutral and red is advantageous into Mountain Spirit, you do see a lot of green teams perform. Uh, this is probably along the lines of what I'd recommend. If you don't have Arena, you can play Triss or Anya depending on how much sustain you need. But yeah, Minami, Shiro, Asura, you could consider Eleanor Aphros if you wailed into that bundle, right? Because especially since it can get to 3/5 targets. Or your other alternative is to play red. Now, I wouldn't really recommend Savanna, like I said, but definitely something where you play black tea could be quite good. Black tea, Felicia, and then you try to fill out that roster with two other characters. You could definitely just slip a Fata in there, right? To get the attack and HP buff from the event. And then she can also deal AoE damage as well as buff Black Tea's pen. Definitely not a bad option at all. Fourth slot would be Arena if you have it. Otherwise, you could look into something like SR Asura for vulnerability. Obviously, I wouldn't advise any blue teams or anything. Oh, and if you have... I don't think Celena's great here because it's not always multiple targets. I would pass on Celena here. I wouldn't recommend any blue teams either, obviously, because it's a green boss, so blue gets Pathos countered and doesn't deal a lot of damage. But yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on the event. If you do like this content, please let me know, and I will continue to do my best to go over these patches as they happen. And thank you so much for watching the video.